Welcome back to day 3 of our home bakery bookkeeping boot camp. And I hope you're getting more and more comfortable with the concept of tracking your income, tracking your expenses so that you have a better understanding of how your business is doing. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to start logging our expenses. And this is probably the area where home bakers struggle the most because spending can happen all over the place from different accounts for different types of products and for different needs. So to kind of rein all that in, I have several resources for you that are going to help you start to track where you are doing your spending. So remember, just like when we were logging our income and we needed to know where it was coming from and what category it was, what account it was going to, the same is true with our expenses. We need to have detailed information about our spending. We need to track where that money was spent from, and we're also going to need to track what was purchased with it so we can put it into its categories. You remember those categories that we used on the day 1 boot camp where we did our setup. Now we're going to start to use those categories over on the expense tab. So let's jump on into the expense tab of our spreadsheet, and it is the 4th tab from the bottom left. And you're going to think it looks a lot like the income tab, and it does. So I want you to be super careful and always take a moment to look at which tab you're working in. Yesterday we worked on the income log, and today we're going to work on the expense log. So let's take a little tour of this page, and then I'm going to share with you some tips for keeping your expenses organized. So first on the left is that cell that tells you which tab you're working in. So you always want to make sure that you take a moment to make sure you're on the right page. And then we have one of these cells that just tallies everything on the page. So if you're using this spreadsheet month over month, you're going to see total expenses from the time that you started logging on this spreadsheet. And then we're going to use the expense log in a similar way to the income log, where we're going to enter the date of our purchase and any kind of reference ID. Could be a receipt number if you need it. But again, it doesn't have a formula in that cell, so it's not necessary for this transaction to get logged. Then you can use a description, and this is where I'll usually put myself a note like Aldi food purchases or Amazon order, anything that you need to kind of help identify that expense if you need to go back and look at it. Then we go to the category column, and when you click on that one, you'll see that you get the drop down arrow. And this is where you're going to use those expense categories that we did in our setup. So you'll recognize those as those basic expense categories that are pretty standard for bookkeeping and accounting purposes, for eventually incorporating into your end of year taxes. Now, if you need a refresher on how to categorize your different purchases into those categories, be sure and check out the download, which has a list of all the categories, a little explanation about them. And then I've just added some frequently used home bakery type of expenses and given you a little shortcut as to where those go as well. The next column is the account, and this is how did you pay for that transaction. So here's where you're going to see the drop down of all of the different accounts that you used during the day 1 setup. And then finally, you're going to enter the total expense, how much you spent on that transaction. And if you need to give yourself any notes here, you can. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you see that this is sort of a never-ending spreadsheet. It just goes on for 1,000 cells, and hopefully you don't have that many expenses, but you might. And so you're just going to continue to use the next available cell below your last entry. And just like on the income page, you don't have to worry about putting these in any type of order. because when we move on to our overview tabs, you're going to see how we can sort this information to be more helpful to us. So let's go ahead and take a look at our sample data and do some entries for our expenses. And if you're following along using sample data, then you can grab that download below this video as well, or you could be entering your actual data and you're just going to be referencing your list of expenses from your own records. So our first sample data is from July 13th, 2023, and we put gas in the car. It says fuel for deliveries. So we're going to do July 13th, 2023. And I have no reference. My description is just going to be gas for delivery. And the category that I'm going to put gas into is travel. Travel has everything auto in there. So you're going to put your tolls when you go through a paid highway, if you have those on your way to the farmer's market, for example, gas for your car, parking tickets, anything like that. That all goes into travel. And then the account that I paid for that expense was in cash, and my total expense was $30. All right, and that is my entry for my gas. And then I have another similar entry on June 25th, also gas. And I'm going to put that again in my travel category. And I paid cash on this one as well. And my cost was $30. I'm just going through the sample data right now. You're going to do the same as you go through your own data. Let's do another one and hopefully answer a few more questions about the categories. So this one is June 10th. 2023, and this is satin ribbon in assorted colors used for tying my boxes up, and that was $10. And my category for this is actually going to be inventory, because this is something that I need to create the product that I have for sale. So my packaging, my labeling, my ribbon on the boxes is all part of creating my item for sale. And for this, I used my Citibank card. Let me just correct my spelling there on ribbon. And this cost was $10. Next up, I have some edible glitter that I bought on July 8th. And edible glitter, if you're guessing inventory, you're right, because it's a cost of making my cakes. So I'm going to put that in inventory. I also bought that online with my Citibank card, and my edible glitter was $12. All right, let's jump down to some of the expenses that are listed out on the sample data as overhead style expenses. They're still expenses. This is still money that we're spending in our business, and this is travel to and from the local farmers market, and that's $80. So this was on July 22nd. 2023, and this is travel to farmers market, which is essentially gas, and it goes in the travel category. Now this is sample data that I automatically generated, so would you call it gas for delivery or gas for travel? It's completely up to you. This is just the way the sample data was generated. And that gas for going to the farmer's market, I did use my Citibank card to pay for, and that was $80 round trip. Let's do another transaction and find something that goes into a different category to answer any questions you have about some of the other categories where you'll be putting your expenses. So I have $15 that was my credit card fee for June. So I got billed on June 18th for my credit card processing fees. And the category for that, it actually has a category all its own. Credit card fees go right here. And I paid for that with my Citibank, and then my expenses were $15. So your credit card fees are an expense that you pay in order to take credit cards. This is typical if you're using Square to process your credit cards. You get a one-time fee and then a small percentage, and you can see this in your reports what your credit card fees are. You might be using a different merchant processor, so every credit card processor will be giving you fees as an expense to use their services. So you can put all of your credit card fees each month into the category of credit card fees. Now let's take a look at another overhead expense, and the next one on our sample data is shipping supplies and packaging materials that we purchased on August 9th. Shipping supplies, and this goes into the category of shipping supplies. So this would be the boxes, the bubble wrap, the tape that you use to put your baked goods inside of when you're shipping them, if you are lucky enough to be able to ship your baked goods. And my shipping supplies, I paid with my Citibank card, and I spent $8 on shipping supplies that day. All right, and then my next expense is July 12th, I spent $95 on new baking pans. So let's log July 12th, and these are going to be new baking pans. And new baking pans are considered equipment in your business, anything that you need to buy that you're not going to use up. So it's not like you use part of that goes into the package. So if I were using cupcake liners, part of those would end up in the finished product, and it is considered an inventory item. But my baking sheets, I get to use over and over, and that's considered equipment. And I paid for that with my Citibank, and that was $95. As you're gathering up all of your expenses in your business and getting into these new habits of logging them here, you might need to do a little bit of an audit on yourself just to make sure that you're not forgetting any expenses. So another download that I've put below this lesson is my overhead tracker. And this is just a sheet of paper where you can keep track of everything that you spend in the course of the month to run your business. Now, ideally, every time that bill comes up, if it's on auto pay and you kind of sometimes out of sight, out of mind with that bill, once you get the notification that a certain bill has gone through, I want you to think to yourself, is this a bill that I'm paying for my business? And is it a recurring bill? And then you can log it on that overhead tracker. So your overhead tracker is all of those recurring bills that you're paying for your business, and it's going to help you to feel like you've got a grasp on what your monthly expenses are. Once you understand what your monthly expenses are, you're going to feel so much more in control of your business and be able to make these decisions like, should I participate in another event this month? Do I need to host another flash sale? Because you know that your expenses are what they are. They're fixed and they're not changing. At least some of them are. And you're going to need to make sure that your income exceeds that. That's how we make profit in our business, is we have more income than expenses. And by having a good look at your expenses and knowing approximately what your break even is each month, that is when your income and your expenses are equal, then you know, okay, I need to do a little bit more and make some profit here. So it starts by having a good understanding of your expenses. So the overhead tracker is a great first step for you to start to gather all your recurring expenses together and take a look at them. And also on that overhead tracker download, you're going to see a utilities audit. And a utilities audit is necessary if you want to your business to pay a portion of the utilities that you use. You might start with your water bill, your electric bill, or your gas bill. Those are the ones where bakers say they start to see a difference when they start their home bakery, that their home is paying more for those expenses. I usually start with water because that's the one I notice the biggest change. We're washing so many dishes, we're running the dishwasher all day long, and it's going to show up like your business is causing your home to pay a little bit more on your monthly water bill. So you'll see a utilities audit there, which is going to have you go back in your records, find some old water bills before you started your home bakery, and jot down those amounts. And then you're going to go and find some current water bills while you're running your home bakery and start to look at what the differences are between pre-home bakery and current expenses. And then that'll give you an idea of how much you are impacting your water bill, for example. And then if your business wants to pay your home for your water expenses, you can actually log that as an expense and write a check to yourself for the amount that your bakery is using in water. You can do this. So let's talk about your homework for today, day 3 of the boot camp. So for today, I want you to take a look at your expenses. I want you to start to list all of the recurring expenses in your business. You can use that overhead tracker if you want to. And I want you to think about where you're going to keep your receipts when you make purchases. So do you have an envelope in your purse where you are consistently saving your receipts? Or do you have a strategy for scanning your receipts right when you purchase them and uploading them into an app on your phone? Whatever method you decide to do, be consistent and intentional about it so that when it comes down to that dedicated time each week where you're going to log your expenses and your income, you know exactly where to go to find all those receipts. You're going to the Notes app on your phone, you're going to the envelope in your purse, you're opening up your purchase history from Amazon. I want you to be really clear on where your receipts are going to live so that that task of entering your expenses is going to become easy for you. So listing your expenses, deciding where your receipts are going to live, and then taking a look at the download resources for today and deciding whether you want to go ahead with the overhead tracker and the utilities audit. Okay, that's it. Now, after today, we are going to dig into looking at this data. So we've put in a lot of information up until now, and I want you to be excited for tomorrow's lesson because this is where we start to see some really cool features in the spreadsheet. So I will see you here, same time, same place tomorrow for day 4 of our boot camp. We're going to go dive into the monthly overview tab. All right, friends, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.